the Open Mobile Summit with Mark Rolston. He's the Chief Creative Officer of Frog Design. And Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Please tell us a little bit first about your role at the company and what Frog Design does for those who don't know it.
Well, in a nutshell, I guide the creative organization for the company. And Frog is a creative company. We're a design firm in the classical sense, but we've sort of grown up over the last 45 years to do a lot more, and that entails helping our customers figure out what products they should be making, what markets to get into, and then guiding them through the product development and design process.
And you're talking about the post-smartphone era, which a lot of folks are just arriving, maybe a little late to this party, but really is starting to reach critical mass out there with the handset sales, at least in the US and in Europe and developed markets.
It's a hot topic right now. I mean, we've seen in only maybe 6 years massive change in the market, moving from dependency on basic PCs to do most of our computing, to where now we've finally got something where you can kind of move about in the world and have a lot of the same, what I might call horsepower with us, right? So we've got these extra powers that a computer can give us.
Right.
Well, at the same time, we're just kind of getting our head around that. And in the same way that the laptop didn't go away, we're seeing another wave emerge, right? And we're seeing new ways, new forms of computing emerge that promise, hopefully, to offer us ways to interact with the computer with the value that we're used to or desire from things like smartphones in context where we can be more natural, like the way we are talking right now. We can kind of engage each other without having to look at a little box. But if you and I needed a chunk of information, a little bit of information, or to tell a computer to do something in the midst of this conversation, the current mode of computing would sort of tear us away from this conversation. I'd have to unlock my phone, zip over to that application. Let's say we're hungry. You hungry?
Yeah, sure.
We get to order food right now, right? Well, what we're looking at, what we're beginning to talk about is not only isn't it great we can do that on our smartphone finally right now, but there are new modes that we are hoping to see soon, and we're, Frog's job is essentially to help bring these to life.
So the phone would work with other devices?
Yeah, to bring forms of computing into the here and now so that you're not tunneling into small devices. And what I'm talking about quite practically is devices, let's say we're standing in the kitchen and we want to order food, we could talk to the room. And really it's a microphone on the wall, but it feels more like the room. So we order up lunch. But you don't want the computer reading back this long menu.
Right, it's bad enough waiting for your car to tell you all the phone numbers.
So voice alone isn't the answer. So I'm not saying we move from smartphones to voice. It's a much more interesting answer. We're moving from single devices that do everything for us to a multitude of devices that do parts of the story. And they come together in interesting ways, just when we need it, to do the things that we want them to do. Like, let's continue to order lunch. It might read back, do you want to order what you ordered yesterday? And we say, no, show me a menu. And if we're not in front of a screen, then we use our smartphone. The menu just comes up because we had asked. The phone and the microphone are working together now.
And how close are we technologically to seeing this happen?
Well, that's the problem. It's technologically very possible to do this right now.
But expensive?
It is not expensive. It's an infrastructure challenge. Each company is very used to designing and marketing and offering to the world is a box, right? A little black box with all that you need in it, right? It's got the antenna, it's got the screen, it's got the virtual keyboard. And this kind of world that lets you live, and you might say, in a more natural state, not tunneling into devices, will require these companies work better together, where different devices state their intent or their capabilities, and they come together in the moment to help us out, and then they go away and do their own things again. So imagine projectors in your house that can project a bit of information on the table right when you need it, but then they go away and you don't see a screen in front of you.
Right.
So we don't have to fill our homes with screens. And part of this, from a designer's intent, is to help get us back to a more naturalistic state. And it's not to get away from computing as a value that we enjoy, but to get away from the boxes that sort of inundate our lives. You realize the amount of babysitting we do, and we would have to do to have all the things that we're promising, like smartwatches and a smartphone and a wearable healthcare device and maybe some heads-up display. I mean, it's an untenable situation. So we have to start imagining a different scale of computing, and that's essentially what we've been talking about and pushing.
Well, and as you talk about the different change in interface, you segue into wearables, and that certainly seems to be sort of the next phase that we're looking at. But you're saying maybe it's not going to be we're not going to be as reliant on them, perhaps, as some people are painting.
So there's a couple of things. Wearables are definitely a big part of this future, but they are, in essence, a part of a symphony of devices as opposed to the next smartphone.
Okay.
Right? We're not going to move from a thing this big to a thing this big to a thing this big.
Right.
This becomes an accessory in the way that you think of your outfit. You know, you didn't move from pants to shirts. This year, you know, we're just wearing shirts, and last year we just wore pants.
Yeah.
We wear them to make an outfit, and I think computing is starting to look at itself in that manner. So we would have something that might give us basic status on our wrist. We might have a sensor taped to our ribs to give us basic chemistry in our body if we have a chronic condition to keep after. And then we would have a rich screen to kind of be able to read out high density information. That is a good practical wearables scenario. But even more than that, I have high hopes for the environments around us. Right now, the environments we're in, they're fairly dumb. But just a little bit of technology planted into the walls around us, in the same way light switches are a common element around us, or light bulbs, we can make the room solve for us in such a way that we don't have to carry things with us.
But Mark, this sounds very altruistic, but you think about some tech companies play better with others, and some only, you know, they like to have their own ecosphere, and how do you overcome that? Or does the demand just mean that they have to cater to do it?
Common technologies like what Google offers and things that you think about maps. You experience maps anywhere. So this idea is not that foreign. There are new technologies that are being used right now in a purely social means, like Twitter. But Twitter is a technical conduit between things as well as it is between people. And so you could imagine different devices tweeting instructions to each other. Now, we probably wouldn't use Twitter specifically, but a technology like that could create any device, anytime, any message infrastructure.
Sure, and smart homes are being built with this technology already.
Exactly. And so part of it is for people to get their minds around it. When you look at like the Nest, it's a beautiful idea, not simply a beautiful product. And the idea is simply the thermostat's not just the thing on the wall, right? It was only the thing on the wall before, but now it's the thermostat's in my pocket, or it's on my PC, or it's the thing on the wall.
Or maybe it's in your car, and you
start to recognize
before you get home
systems instead of things. And as we get our head around that, it'll be easier to introduce these products.
Yeah, and you think about this as we talk about the companies. Do we start looking at winners and losers already? Is it way too early to think about who could be, potentially ahead in this game?
I don't know about listing exact names, but the characteristics are people who get systems over things. There will be, I think, a new class of players who don't make computers today, who can successfully make the things, the small affordances. Like the people today who make light switches, the Honeywells of the world. They're very good at being in the homes, in the offices of this world. But they're not like Google or Apple in making whole operating systems. So there'll be those folks, the Googles, who will have the information and the operating systems. And then there'll be the Honeywells of the world making the sort of endpoints that we scatter around us or on us. Healthcare companies, of course, getting in the game. Fashion becomes, I think, a real necessary component.
Sure.
This isn't going to take off the wristwatch until it's a fashion object, not a technological object.
Well, I noticed you're not wearing one. Many people have dropped them.
They look like shit.
Well, because you have it on your mobile device. You have the time, and it's so much more readily apparent.
It's a redundant story right now.
Yeah.
So when this becomes a true accessory, when it allows me to say, no, a phone call's coming in, or understand when the next appointment's coming in a very subtle way, as opposed to just being an oversized smartphone on my taped to my wrist, then I might buy one.
How far are we before we see moving away from the smartphone? You talk about it. I mean, it sort of seems to do well enough as it is now. Does it really have to move to a new fashion status?
Does it do well enough? I mean, we're all in the moment right now, and it's super exciting, and so we're willing to babysit these things. But I do think there's sort of this point at which people the price to performance, you might say the cost, and I don't mean cost as in dollars, but the cost to our lives and the performance they offer, we will continue to apply pressure for. And it's that pressure that causes these other inventions to become much more viable. So the phone doesn't go away. I think it's a beautiful invention, and I'm not trying to poo-poo it at all. Just like the laptop doesn't go away.
Right.
We now carry them both. The opportunities to introduce these new modes of computing, and then to start to need, just like we need our laptop a little bit less because we've got our cell phone, we're going to need both of those eventually less so because of these other modes. I can give you really practical examples. This isn't just, I think, a hopeful fairy tale. We worked with Disney for the last 3 years. When you go into Disney World today in Florida, you're wearing a wristband essentially. And the wristband is your means of getting in the park. It's your ticket. It's also your means of paying for your meal. It's a means of getting into your hotel room. It's a means for the princess who meets your daughter to know your daughter's name. And when they take a photograph of you all, to understand that that's your daughter and that photograph belongs to your family and your family's vacation portal. All of that is that's computing magic, but it's all hidden inside of a simple wristband, and it doesn't require really an interface in the traditional sense. That's the kind of future, I think, that it's really computing driven, but it's not the sort of obvious, facile expression.
When you sort of think about maybe moving away from carrying the phone, I mean, there are folks out there who talk about, maybe it's something that you actually wear on your body, behind your ear. I mean, that may be farther down the line, but it sort of gets rid of the babysitting.
Yeah.
Is that something that you can foresee? Is the technology
Absolutely.
sort of almost there? Is it ready?
It's obvious that there'll be a version of the smartphone that simply fits on your ear. The Bluetooth headset is the computer at some point, but it's a voice only, right? And so you might have a screen in your pocket or your purse that you pull out only occasionally.
Or you have glass or something else.
Yeah, glass is a particular technology I think requires a separate conversation. In all these ways, a lot of what we talked about applies, except that the eyes are the window to the soul. And if I, while I'm trying to talk to you, keep looking at a beautiful woman over there or the game on TV, and we keep having this conversation like that, I'm going to break the moment.
Yeah.
And that is what Google Glass faces. Anything that deals with the eyes.
Or if you're riding your bicycle.
Yeah, it's a social contract that we have amongst each other that it's a question whether we overcome it. And I'm very aggressive about technology adoption, but I do believe there are limits. And half of my story is about pulling back into a more naturalistic life, and so I think there's a real practical question around that product. I love it as an idea, but I'm not sure about where it goes.
Well, we'll have to follow up another time. Mark Rolston, thank you so much for joining us.